Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rido Putra Tandi, and this is my poetry final test about The Raven poem by Edgar Allan Poe and the analysis of the poem. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember. It was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrote its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, faintly I had sought to borrow from my book's surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what threat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven toe," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and grand ancient graven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpture bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before, On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what is uttered is honestly stuck and stored, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirge of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling. Straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird, a bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly gown and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burn into my bosom's core. This and more I sat defining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining, that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfume from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God had lent thee, by these angels he had sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from my time memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff, this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, think of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore. Desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, say I, think of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aiden it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shriek, upstarting, get thee back into tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming shows his shadows on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Now the poem analysis. So I want to summarize the whole poem first. So the Raven Poetry is a poem by Edgar Allan Poe that talks about a grieving man who lost his wife Lenore, possibly, and he was visited by a mysterious raven late at night. And the poem goes into the theme of loss, grief, and sorrow for an unanswered questions. In the poem, the word nevermore was being told in repetitive response by the raven itself, and it adds the eerie atmosphere, and the poem itself ends with a sense of despair and mourning for the loss of his wife, Lenore. And then the theme and the tone of the poem. The theme of The Raven revolves around grief, loss, and the tormenting impact of death. It explores the narrator's emotional struggle with the death of his beloved wife, Lenore, and his descent into despair and madness. And the tone of this poem is somewhat sorrowful, melancholic, and even eerie. It gives a sense of sadness and desperation and a haunting presence of the raven. Now we move on to the figure of speech. Figures of speech in this, there are a lot of figures of speech in the poem, such as simile. The simile in this, an example of simile in this poem is the comparison of the raven's eyes into a demon that adds a vivid and chilling image to the narrative. And also in the line, ghastly grim, an ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. That was the comparison of the raven to something ghastly grim, which is a simile, and it emphasized the eerie nature of the bird. And then another figure of speech is metaphor. In the poem, the raven serves as a metaphor for the narrator's grief and the haunting memories of Lenore, his wife. In the line, and the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain. The rustling curtains here are metaphorically described as a silken, sad, and uncertain, which creating a vivid image that goes beyond the literal description of the curtains, and it's a metaphor. The next figure of speech is personification. In this poem, the raven is personified with a human-like qualities. So such as the ability of the raven to talk and speak the line "nevermore," and also in the line, and the only word where there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. The word spoken is applied to the raven that gives the human-like qualities of speech. So the raven can talk in this poem, and it's the personification of the raven in the poem. Next is apostrophe. The narrator addresses that the raven directly, emphasizing its significance of a symbol figure. For example, in the line, "Wretch, I cried, thy God had lent thee, by these angels be had sent he." The poet here, Edgar Allan Poe, addresses that the raven as a wretch using apostrophe. So it addresses an absent of imaginary person. In this case, the bird itself, the raven. And next is allusion. There's a reference to balm in Gilead that alludes to a biblical concept of spiritual healing. So it emphasizes the narrator's desperate search of relief for his wife. For example, in the line, "Quote the raven nevermore," the phrase "quote the raven" is an allusion to the medieval classical poetry. So it was around the medieval era and the classical poetry, and it gives the poem a timeless and literary quality of itself. And then a hyperbole. In the poem, the intense emotions and exaggerations of the narrator's expressions is an example of hyperbole. So, for example, in the line, "Then the bird said nevermore," the repetitive use of nevermore is a hyperbolic expression that emphasizes the response of the raven. And then oxymoron. In the poem, the combination of mournful and nevermore creates a contradictory effect, hence the oxymoron. In the line, "deep into the darkness peering," and the phrase "deep darkness" combines the contradictory terms, creating an oxymoron. Next is synecdoche. In the line, "open here I flung the shutter, went with many a flirt and flutter." The phrase "many a flirt and flutter" use the term flutter to represent the raven's movement and commotion. Flirt and flutter represent the raven's action, hence the synecdoche of this, an example of synecdoche in the poem. And then metonymy. For example, in the line, "and the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain." Again, the silken and the purple curtain represent luxury, elegance, or wealth. And also in the phrase "seraphim, whose footfalls tinkle on tufted floor," employs footfalls as a metonymy for the presence of the angels or spiritual beings. So those are the examples of metonymy. And an example of symbols in the figure of speech. And the last thing is symbols, and The examples are the raven itself is a symbol on the poem. It represents various ideas, including death, or even a mourning, or even a supernatural symbol of the poem. Also, the chamber door is a symbol of boundary between rational world inside the rational, mysterious, and supernatural world. And also, the lamp symbolize that the narrator's fading hope and flickering rationality. Those are the examples of symbols in the poem. And then devices of repetition and sounds. There are 5 devices of repetition and sounds, such as rhyme and rhyme scheme. The raven use a combination of internal rhyme and end rhyme because the poem have rhyming words that are within the same line, and the last syllables in the poem have similar sounds. The rhyme scheme in the poem use the ABC BBB in stanza 1 until stanza 18. So it used the rhyme scheme ABC BBB. Next is the alliteration. There are a couple of alliteration in the poem where the consonant sounds are repeated at the beginning of the words, creating a alliteration. Some examples are doubting, dreaming, dreams, no mortal ever dare to dream. The repetition of D sound. Silken, sad, uncertain. The repetition of S sound. And then assonance. Assonance involve the repetition of vowel sounds within number words. Some examples are open here, I flung the shutter. The repetition of the O sound. Deep into the darkness peering. Repetition of E sound. And next is refrain. The repeated use of word nevermore serves as a refrain, emphasizing that the raven's ominous message and intensifying the overall mood of the poem. And the last is onomatopoeia. There are some onomatopoeia words like rapping and tapping that imitates the sounds of they describe, adding to the sensory of the poem. And finally, the rhythm and meter of the poem. In the poem, Edgar Allan Poe used many rhythms such as iambic, anaesthetic, trochaic, dactylic, and even spondaic. So all of the rhythm. The poem also has a steady musical rhythm that are created by the use of trochaic octameter, so where each line consists of 8 syllables with alternating stressed and unstressed beats. Okay, so that's all about my poem and the analysis of The Raven's Poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.